Let this be a reminder for you to back up your data. It is not a joke. People always talk about it, and everyone always rolls their eyes. And even if you try to back it up, you end up just doing just a cloud drive or maybe a little hard drive off to the side, and it's not enough. And I do that too, so I can't say much. And I have been trying to get better and better. I made a home server. We'll get into all that. I pretty much lost my entire drive on Monday, and I'll explain how it happened. And it was my fault, and that's fine. But I wanted to make this video because data loss is such a prevalent issue, and people don't realize it. It's prevalent, but it's not noticeable. People don't see it, and it's not necessarily something always physical that you can touch. But data is so important to us in our daily lives. And so on this drive, I had my personal brand content folder, so all the content creation that I do. I had my pictures, which I was trying to reorganize, and luckily I had like a backup of a lot of those, but because I merged it with a couple folders, I didn't know exactly which ones I merged it with, and so I don't even know if I had backups of those other folders, meaning I probably had like 60, 70, 80% of it backed up, but not all 100%. And then my Obsidian vault, which is so very crucial to my daily life and how I'm producing content and keeping track of everything and having all my books, and I had just moved my whole collection of books into it too. And my last backup of it was June 20th. So it was like 2 weeks ago at that point. It was on Monday of this week, and I was like 16. So like about 16 days is what I mean. And the thing is, even though I had the backup, I didn't have all my most recent files, let alone everything caught up. And I tried to back it up like once a month, but this was just happened to be right in that middle of that month. And then on top of that, I had a 600 gigabyte retro gaming collection that I have been accumulating since I was a child, offloading my games over the years. I grew up with Game Boy, so I was able to take those games off. And so, like, I had this giant, like, a whole terabyte. It was like 100, it was like 90 gigs. 90, not 90, so it's about 900 gigs worth of files that I just lost. Now, I'm explain how. All because of this stupid little flash drive, right? I wanted to install SteamOS on my Legion Go, and I found myself not focusing just enough. So the Windows Disk Management interface has been the same for like 20 years, and they have not updated that interface. So please, wish they would update it. Essentially, you couldn't scroll on there, and I had to like get that tiny little scroll bar, and I thought I had scrolled down enough. I had my main boot drive, I had my external drive that I work off of, and then I had this flash drive. And I guess I just hadn't scrolled far enough and wasn't looking closely like I normally do. I normally am very uptight about this because of this exact reason, and I accidentally formatted my main drive with everything on it. And I'm going to explain to you, I don't have any visuals, but I'm going to explain to you how I fixed it and how I got my data back, because I did get it back. And so if you're watching this and you're like, oh, like I'm worried for him, I was worried too. As soon as it happened, my heart sank into my like stomach, and I was not doing well for most of this week. And I consulted AI about it. I mean, I'm a techie, but I don't know necessarily hardly any of the tools to do a lot of this stuff to fix it. I know that it's technically possible, and the tool that it recommended was PhotoRec, and that was cool, and it technically did work. However, I started running at about 10 a.m. on Monday, and by the time evening rolled around, it was about 18%, something like that. And then by the time like I don't know, midnight or whatever, it was like 25%. And then from basically evening of Monday to evening of Tuesday, about 24 hours later, it was still at 25%, which is insane. It was still making progress. I could still see files going up, and it was still going through different sectors, so it was still working, but it would have lasted until Friday. It's still only Thursday today. So like it would have been still running now, and probably only at 50% now. And so that was just not going to work. And ironically, I had a decent amount of my data backed up. I had some of the games on this little Game Boy. I had some of the games on my Legion Go. I had some of the games on my Retroid Pocket. And so I had some of the games mixed around, just not the newer ones. I had my Obsidian Vault still backed up, just not the most recent files and the books. And I had like some of the pictures, but again, the whole merging situation. So I had a lot of complexity there, but really, I just needed to get the files that was new. So there was another tool that's, I guess, connected to PhotoRec that is actually a little bit better in some cases. They're both used in different ways. I think PhotoRec is more of just like, it's going to probably work. It's just going to take a long time. And it happened to also be a situation where I was going through like USB-A. I had both of my drives plugged into the USB-A ports, not USB-C, so I was really bottlenecked on the speed of that too. But I wasn't thinking when I first turned it on. I was just trying to save my data. And so I was just super stressed out about it, and I decided to cancel the PhotoRec and start Test Disk, which is the other app it recommended. And I also did it on my Lenovo ThinkPad, which is a better processor on there, and I was able to switch over to USB-C, as you can see. And when I did that, I was able to actually go a lot faster, and the drive I put it onto also was a lot faster. So I think that made a huge difference. But I was able to go in there, and I'm not good with command line, and that kind of scares a lot of people when they hear that. But it was more like a menu. It wasn't really typing in much. You had to type in like 1 or 2 lines, and the AI gave it to me. And honestly, probably all these articles out there probably would too. You just copy that command line, put it in there, it's fine. Once the menu comes up, it's literally just arrow keys, C, and enter. That's it. So even if you're not used to command line, it's fine. I don't like using it myself yet. Even though I'm a techie, I'm slowly inching my way towards it, and I'm probably going to use it eventually. But for someone like you who may not want to, that's fine too. You don't have to use it. Just you have to go into the command line to get into the menu for it. It is more visual. It's not like pretty like an actual interface, but it still works. And what I was able to do was copy all my folders onto an SSD, and I was able to save my data. And I'm making this video because about a year ago, Windows Update bricked my mini PC. I don't know what happened. And first off, let me just rant a little bit. I turned off Windows Update. I hate Windows Update. It constantly tries to force itself on you, which Windows does that with everything, mind you. But I pause it all the time. I hate Windows Update. I don't want my system to update. It's not safe that way, actually, ironically. Yes, the security updates are important, but that's the only thing that's important. And even then, it's kind of risky. It's not usually worth the hassle when something happens. And because of that bricking my system, I also hadn't backed up my Obsidian Vault at that time. I have a solution to that, and I'm going to get to that at the very end. So if you are watching this channel because of Obsidian and knowledge management, I have a solution here. So essentially, I was able to scrape my data off of my drive. I had to kind of like hack into my drive because there was some sort of drive protection on it, and I was able to hack into it, and it didn't quite work doing that way. Ironically, I think the way I saved it was I put the drive in an old computer and just loaded up Windows, like as if I just was running my old computer, which was weird. And I think it just barely worked, and I was able to quickly copy my Obsidian Vault over, and then everything else I just let delete. And back then, the Obsidian Vault was 2 gigabytes less too, so it was a little bit faster. Again, back up your data. So let's talk about that first before I get to the Obsidian solution. When it comes to backing up your data, there's a 3-2-1 solution. I don't know enough about like how to explain that simply, so please just look up the 3-2-1 backup. There'll be plenty of content about it. But essentially, you want to have it in 3 different places, 2 of which are hardware, 1 of which is like out in the cloud, and that way you could make sure, or away from your house at the very least. And so, for example, I have a 5 terabyte backup drive, and for this, I really don't like ever plugging this in. I try to keep it not plugged in hardly ever, except for when I'm using it, and ironically, I had to keep it plugged in for like over a day, because this was the only drive big enough I had lying around to be the endpoint for saving my data, because what PhotoRec was trying to do was put the entire terabyte onto it, and then just try to like go from there. And luckily, I was able to manage to get an SSD off a marketplace quickly the other night, and I was able to use that as the endpoint, so I didn't have to keep using this, but that is like the backup. And then what I'm trying to do now is that I repurposed the SSD that I was working off of as my retro gaming collection. I'm probably going to copy that over to this drive as well, so I can make sure I have a backup of the main drive. And then I'm going to use a different drive to work off of and periodically back up my data to. I need to have a separate content drive, I think, as well. So I think that is the best way to go about it when you're locally. Except there is a much better solution. It's just pricier, especially in this Ramageddon market we're in, and that's having a NAS, a network attached storage. Now, technically, I have my Intel NUC, which is what I use as my operating system, or my home server is what I mean. The operating system I use for it is called Zima OS, which, again, for nerds may not be as powerful as what they might want, like TrueNAS. But if you're a nerd but you don't want to deal with the learning curve of something complex like TrueNAS and Proxmox and even Unraid, I think that the easiest way to go about it is using an easier operating system. There's Olaris, there is FIGO, and then the one I chose was Zima. And again, they're all free for the initial person like you and I who just have a couple drives. And Olaris might not be free. I think it is. It's just, it needs more powerful hardware is what it was. But all 3 of them are free for the basic plan. And essentially just made it much more visual and easy to get into. And I think that's kind of why Ugreen is also a very famous brand that people really have been adopting well, because you can use their operating system that they use, which is very user friendly. And having a network to connect storage is basically kind of replaces the need for something like that drive or my working drive. I'm still probably going to have all three. And then on top of that, you use the cloud drives. I don't trust Google or Microsoft. I'm definitely getting down that Google rabbit hole. I'm getting into that. I don't want to use big data companies anymore. However, I'm a content creator. I'm going to have to. And the only thing I'm particularly backing up is the Obsidian Vault and a zip file on a drive somewhere. And that way I can make sure, no matter what, I have a drive. I also have like a flash drive lying around that has a periodic backup as well. So I have a backup of a backup of a backup of a backup. And that just makes me feel more safe, because I don't want to lose my Obsidian Vault. And then the other solution that I'm going to do is, speaking of home servers, is that I'm going to use SyncThing on the home server to sync it across all my devices. So my phone, my tablet, my laptop, my computer, my other computer, I can have my Obsidian Vault everywhere I go. And I think that is probably the best way, because it's still technically local. And Obsidian Sync didn't work for me in the cloud, like the one that they provide. It didn't work for me. And maybe it would now. It's been a couple years, but I'm not going to waste money on trying it again right now, especially since I have this option. And essentially, this will be the solution I need to keep that from not happening again. If something happens to this master file, that sucks, and that means that like the computer died. Like maybe there was a fire or something like that. But something is going to have to happen to this computer. The drive is the newest drive I have, so I think it's probably fine. And if that happens, there's a copy on all these other devices. And that is the solution I have here. So please let this be a warning to you and back up your data. Stupid stream.